here is 14 minutes and 21 seconds of useless Super Mario Bros. Wonder facts. If you guys enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Mario Wonder is such a colourful and highly detailed game, with a bunch of animations for several things that we have never had in 2D Mario games. Taking a look back at the new Super Mario Bros. Series, these animations are a breath of fresh air in 2D Mario and give much more life to both the characters and the enemies. A lot of these animations you have most likely seen, but did you know that certain enemies have unique animations for when they bump into each other? For example, when Goombas bump into each other, they'll headbutt each other as a sort of a greeting. Other enemies such as Koopa Troopers will butt bump each other, and even Out My Ways will kick up their feet as a sort of greeting. If two different enemies were to bump into each other, sometimes they might have slightly different animations, such as instead of the Koopa butt bumping, they will do a bow instead. While on enemy animations, there are some other super cool details to cover. Unlike in previous 2D Mario games, enemies will actually attack the player rather than just walking into you to damage you. Most of these animations show how the enemies actually damage the player, with enemies like Goombas and Koopas biting the character. They will also react when the player is around them by keeping their eyes glued to them, or will sometimes react scared when a friend is killed near them. An interesting thing with Koopas is that when you jump on their heads, their friends won't actually react, but if you kill them with a fire flower, they will, which is due to the fact that jumping on their heads doesn't actually kill them, as they just go back into their shells. Moving on to player animations, there are a few unique little quirks with a couple of animations that are pretty weird. Finally, in a 2D Mario, we have a ledge teeter animation for every character, including a unique one in elephant form as well. The interesting part about this animation is that characters when in elephant form will both have a forward-facing and backwards-facing ledge teeter animation, while the usual animation only happens when facing forward on the ledge. This applies to every other power-up as the character's main model doesn't change, and therefore all the animations are the same. This is super interesting, as it's odd that the elephant power-up has both a forward and reverse teeter animation, while the usual one only works forward. While on the elephant power-up, the actual transform animation has two different variations depending on which character is transforming, with the male characters using a stronger stance and the female characters using a slightly more feminine one. The weird thing with these animations is that Toadette actually uses the male transformation animation, which could be due to the fact Toadette has a more similar body type to the other Toads compared to the princesses, but it's still an odd little animation detail. The final useless animation detail is that none of the characters have any idle animations, which seems kind of out of place in a game with so much character as Mario Wonder. Simple animations such as the ones in the 3D Mario games would fit well in a game such as Mario Wonder, so it's weird not seeing a single one in this game. You may know there is a badge in this game that makes Mario completely invisible to not only the enemies but also to the player as well, and it is meant to be a sort of challenge mode. But what you might not know is that in World 5, the level Light Switch Mansion has a way to nullify this effect. This lies within the core mechanics of this level being the lights that you can turn on and off, and these lights would normally kill boos and show invisible blocks, but has the extra random effect of causing characters to become visible again while under the lights. Which is a super cool nod to the fact that this light makes invisible things visible, so why wouldn't it work on the characters? Whilst on spooky things, the jack-o'-lanterns in the level Upshroom Downshroom that appear when the Wonder Flower is grabbed are actually taken from the Jacko-Goombas in the Super Mario Galaxy games. The specific face used on both the enemy and the pumpkin obstacles in Mario Wonder is exactly the same, and is most likely a cool reference to these enemies. It's a shame these enemies, or their brothers from New Super Mario Bros. The Spunkins, don't appear in Mario Wonder, as this could have allowed for more cool ghost houses or other spooky themed levels. If you are playing as any of the Yoshis, of course you get the ability to eat enemies, and some of these enemies will actually give you the power-up such as Flame Breath. If you use this ability to eat a melon piranha plant, Yoshi will actually be able to spit out the seeds to kill enemies as a sort of pseudo power-up. This is actually a reference back to the first time Yoshi was playable in the main series Mario game, all the way back in Yoshi's Story. Back in this game, if he were to eat a watermelon, he would then fire seeds out in the same manner as he does in Mario Wonder, so it's a cool little nod back to an old classic. The Cosmic Mario that appears in the Beware the Rift level is Mario Wonder's version of the iconic Cosmic Mario from many games before, who would follow Mario's exact movements with a second or so delay. In most Mario games, this enemy was an unkillable obstacle rather than a typical enemy and could not be killed in any way. Unlike the other appearances of Cosmic Mario, in Mario Wonder it is actually possible to completely get rid of him, and all it takes is a simple fireball power-up. The reason why this is super useless is because instead of just taking either a single or a couple fireballs to kill him, it takes a whopping 50 fireballs, so there really isn't much point to actually killing him, as it's much quicker to just finish the level itself. And even if you do end up killing him, all you'll be rewarded with is a single coin for your troubles, which isn't much, but it's pretty funny they added this at all. The very start of the music that plays when you first enter any of the KO arenas is a reference to the Mario Bros. Arcade, which is fitting as they share similar concepts in having to clear the stage of all enemies to advance. Here are both songs so you can compare them. The rest of the music design in this game is crazy, with not only each level having a great soundtrack, but each level having a total of 4 different soundtracks depending on a few elements, as well as a few certain actions such as ground pounding to cause cymbal crashes with the music. The main difference in the level music variations is because of the elephant power-up. When the player is the elephant power-up, the level theme will change to a much brassier version to symbolize the bulkier, louder elephant form. Here is what these two soundtracks sound like. The soundtrack also slightly varies depending on whether or not the character is moving. This is much more subtle than the other change, but you can still just notice the slight variation. These two variables can also overlap, which means there ends up being 4 different variations on every single level theme in the game. The Ninja stage in World 4 is a super fun one where you have to jump to the rhythm in order to progress the stage. This is a super fun level idea and works great in a game like Mario Wonder, but this level also contains a super small detail, being that every playable character speaks in human language to count to the beats of the music, which makes it easier to the players to sync up beats. This detail at first doesn't seem too groundbreaking, but even the non-human like characters such as Yoshi and Nabbit will also count along to the beat. The rhythm badge also shares the same effect, but can happen on any level as the badge allows the same rhythm effect, but instead of doing anything important, it just gives the player extra coins for jumping in time. Another trick you can do to get extra coins involves the skedaddlers. By batting away 5 nuts from the skedaddlers, the final one will burst into coins. After every nut you bat away, the speed will increase as well as the colour until the final one is hit away and the nuts go back to normal. If you try to do this trick more than once, you'll only get 1 coin from this trick. This is a little mini game that acknowledges some of the interactions the elephant power-up gives you with the world, just like this next detail. Also with the elephant power-up, you can hold water throughout some levels and use the water to water plants to give you more coins or unlock secret areas. A nice little detail with this ability is that if you hold onto some water at the very end of the level, your character will actually spray the water onto the poplin next to the flagpole. This will cause the poplin to flower and appear more happy. This has no effect on anything except making the little poplin a little happier, which is always a win. Normal Goombas have a sleeping state where they will remain asleep until woken up by the player. But what is cool about this state is that even if you run into them whilst they are asleep, you won't take any damage, but once they wake up they will go back to being able to damage Mario and friends. These next few facts all have to do with everyone's favourite talking flowers and some random things you may have never seen or realised in your own game. The flowers will have unique dialogue for you when you remain still around them. This can take quite a lot of time before they actually start saying stuff, but here are a few of the lines they can possibly say.
I'm tired. How about you? Am I allergic to me? Sometimes it's nice to space out. I'm a big fan myself.
If you go to the settings menu, there is an option to mute the talking flowers. If you change this setting to off, the flowers will talk back in a sad voice that you muted them, because why would you do such a thing?
Oh, was it something I said?
And aside from dialogue, you can also find these flowers in extremely useless locations, such as the lonely flower under the flagpole in Bull Rush Coming Through, where he will say,
"Hey, someone to talk to!"
and
"Farewell, lonely days!"
So who knows how long this flower has been stuck alone under here for. The flowers can also have a direct response to players' actions, such as the flower in the middle of Piranha Plants on Parade, where the more you jump into him, the more angry he'll get before eventually yelling at you to stop bumping into him. In the Wobble Ruins, the flower at the end of the level will actually try drinking you in blob form and will say you taste delicious, as well as through the level the flowers are commenting on how tasty and delicious you look, so it's likely that the blob is just some form of edible jelly. In Rolling Ball Hall, you normally would have to get the Wonder Flower to progress in the level, as there is a wall blocking your progress forward, which when activating the Wonder Flower you can break with a large spiky ball. But by using an elephant power up, you can actually hit this smaller spiky ball into the wall and skip the entirety of this wonder section. If you do end up doing this, the short part of the level that you would go through normally would be extremely empty, and at the end of the Wonder Flower section, the 3 flowers normally congratulating you will instead be confused and upset on why you skipped the Wonder Flower, saying things like,
How'd you even get in here? That ruins everything. You have to do things in a certain order.
Here is a feature you may have never noticed throughout your playthrough, but occurs in several levels throughout the game, and involves the simple note block. These note blocks will play a tune when you run over them, with each block playing a different note. But not only do they play music in the game, but also through the controller in the form of vibrations. Not only does the controller vibrate over each block, but the vibrations will make the same sound as the note played in the game, which, although very hard to hear properly, is a super cool feature, and I haven't seen this before in any game. Aside from the note blocks, the orange booster rails also share the same feature, and will actually play a song with vibrations that doesn't play in-game, which is a super obscure thing for Nintendo to add, as likely very few people have ever noticed this unless they're paying super high attention to detail. The next part will be covering boss fights, which, since it's a Mario game, isn't really spoilery, but if you don't want to know about them, just skip this part of the video to this timestamp here. If you equip the invisibility badge and enter any of the Bowser Jr. boss fights, you'll be treated to some hidden dialogue for each fight. In the first fight, when you enter the boss room, instead of his usual dialogue, he'll exclaim, before moving on to the normal dialogue. Here are the extra things Bowser Jr. will say to you every time you fight him. The invisibility badge also applies to the final boss fight against Bowser, where he will give you a special piece of dialogue if you have the badge equipped. Instead of Bowser Jr., Castle Bowser just calls you straight out for using the invisibility badge and says, This is not the only extra piece of dialogue you can get during this fight, as by entering the boss fight as Peach, Bowser will say, The cool thing about these two different triggers is that you can actually get both pieces of dialogue by simply playing as Peach with the invisibility badge, where Bowser will first say the invisibility badge line, and then saying the Peach beloved line second, with Peach still giving a shocked reaction, which you can only hear because of course she is invisible. If you were to hold the A button down when you have a spare power up in the power up slot, a balloon will be inflated just above the character's head, which you would normally be able to jump into and transform into the power up. But if you died before you were able to collect the balloon, you wouldn't lose your power up, as it will still be there when you come back to that part of the level where you died, as you will still find the item there in the exact same spot, which though very unlikely can help players who die at the exact moment they tried using their balloon. Bloopers did not make an appearance in this game, which makes them the only original enemy to not appear anywhere in Mario Wonder. This is super odd to me, as the amount of different enemy types in this game is pretty amazing, so it's a shame the iconic blooper couldn't make a return in any form. This is one of the few mainline Mario games where the blooper doesn't appear in, with the other few games being Super Mario Land, Super Mario Land 2, Super Mario World, and Mario 64. So every game since Mario 64 has had some form of blooper in it, except now in Mario Wonder. And finally, the most useless bit of information, the pose of Elephant Mario in the level Blazing Beats goes incredibly hard, and is actually different to the character's usual pose in the spectacle part of the level. If you enjoyed, subscribe, and if I missed anything, let me know down below in the comments.